Good day and welcome to this podcast bulletin of the Namibian newspaper. First, we would like to wish you a happy and healthy and a prosperous new year. Let's get straight into it. Let's look at the stories that made the front page on our newspaper. On Tuesday, Sheligan Peterson and Charmaine Gachihewe reported on COVID-19 straining the hospitals. Private hospitals are getting overwhelmed with the rising COVID-19 cases, while the state hospitals are still accommodating patients as pressure mounts on the health delivery system.
Sheligan Peterson, with the increase of the second wave, COVID-19 second wave in Namibia, the number of hospitalized patients increased, as well as those in intensive care. As a result, we saw private hospitals being strained in terms of availability of hospital beds, availability of ICU beds. It's gotten to a point where these hospitals, the private hospitals, are relying on each other as well as state. It got to a point where private hospitals have to contact each other on a daily basis to find out whether they have bed capacity to accommodate any more COVID-19 patients, and they have now also moved to their reliance on state hospitals. However, state hospitals still remain empty, or mostly empty when it comes to COVID-19 patients, and the burden is placed more on the private hospitals. We spoke to the chairperson of the Private Hospitals Association, Esme Boertes, who said that they are trying to accommodate as many COVID-19 patients as they can, but it's gotten to a point where they are almost full, they're almost overburdened, but currently they are overwhelmed.
Charmaine Gachihewe, another COVID-19 correspondent. The story on the front page, basically like what my colleague Sheligan said. Private hospitals are overwhelmed and they are almost at full capacity. The minister, Kalumbi Shangula, has reiterated on many occasions to the Namibian that the public hospitals have space and they are still making more capacity. He has also mentioned that there are enough intensive care unit facilities to accommodate private hospitals, private patients. What we have noticed is the fact that there are more patients who prefer to be treated privately. I guess it could be because of, how state has been perceived over the years. But Shangula has told us that private hospitals can approach state if they need their patients to be hospitalized. And I think it has been happening. There are patients who have been referred to ICU units at public hospitals. So that's one of the things that sort of stood out for this story.
Headline reads as COVID-19 strains hospitals. And also Esther Mbathera from the coast reported on the boy that went missing, Spencer Mandela Nekale. Headline reads as, I have hope that he is alive. The father of 3-year-old Spencer Mandela Nekale, who disappeared a week ago from his aunt's house at Luderis, says he still has hope that his son will be found alive and well. And Puyapawa Nakashole reported on AR to set up a labor union. The Affirmative Repositioning AR movement plans to establish a labor union to liberate the Namibian workers in the public sector from reactionary and co-opted unions. Moving on to Wednesday's newspaper, Alana Shikongo reported on the case of flooding. The flooding rivers and flowing of dams in the southern parts of Namibia is said to be the biggest since the 90s, as the country's third largest surface reservoir was filled to 117.8 capacity on Tuesday morning. Headline in that story reading as, flooding in south biggest since the 90s. And Sheligan Peterson reported that the Minister of Health and Social Services, Kalumbi Shangula, says Namibia has not yet established whether it will explore testing for the new variant of the novel coronavirus, despite the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, saying the country has already started working with partners.
As we know, Namibia is experiencing its second wave of COVID-19 infections. And as a result of the variants discovered in the United Kingdom and South Africa, which is already expected to be here in Namibia, we've seen spikes in terms of the number of infections and the rate of infections. And now the conversation around the variant being in Namibia has already been suspected by the CDC, by the health minister, Dr. Kaumba Shangula, and experts, infectious disease doctors already suspected it's in Namibia because of the current spike or the current second wave. Now, the question of confirmation came into play because doctors can suspect, but they need confirmation to ensure. But at the time that when this story was written, there seemed to be confusion between the health minister, Shangula, and the country director for Namibia of the Centers for Disease Control and Preventions, that is Dr. Eric Zioban. Dr. Shangula did not seem to be informed around whether Namibia is exploring the possibility or whether Namibia is testing for the variant and working with other countries. And Dr. Zioban from the CDC had the information that Namibia's laboratories are already working with other labs in other countries. That's where the confusion came in. Dr. Shangula explained to me that when the virus hit Namibia, we didn't have the equipment. And the same is as the variant, the testing equipment for the variant. And he just said that Namibia is pondering on the thought of exploring, the possibility of testing for the variant in Namibia. Dr. Zioban said Namibia does not have the equipment to test for the variants in Namibia. However, the laboratories are working with other countries or other laboratories to see if we could send our samples there to test for the variant.
Headline in that story reading as confusion over variant testing. And Lazarus Amukeshe and Sakeo Zikela reported on NAPU entering a GIPF and also the Amupanda housing saga. Namibia's biggest trade union representing civil servant recently said a facility is already in place for them to access part of their pension to build houses through their pension fund.
If you read that story very carefully, you will understand that the issue here at hand is that the Ampanda is questioning the GIPF why it does not allow its beneficiaries or its members to access the part of their pension fund to build houses or to do anything else, let's say agriculture or farming or anything else. So and why is it only possible for people to withdraw their money when they turn 60, when they are unable to work and old not to be productive enough? So the labor union, which is NAPU, it's basically defending the position of the GIPF, saying that there is no need for Ampanda and all these concerned people who came on board, saying that the GIPF's benefit policy needs to be reviewed to allow employees of the government to access part of their pension fund while they are able to work or while they're able to farm or while they're able to build their houses. So NAPU is basically saying that currently, as it stands, GIPF has a policy that allows pensioners or members to access their money before turning 60. I would say that most of the GIPF members basically know because the fund has rules that manages the fund. And when you sign up for as a member of GIPF, you are given those rules and educated about how the fund operates. So I'm not sure whether really it's an issue of ignorance, because the way this issue has spanned out in the public, people are now getting interested in this issue. It looks like there was no access to information about it. We have not seen any further engagement apart from people who engage in each other on social media. But I would say it's an interesting and welcome development to see Namibians engaged in discussions of this matter that affects their future actually.
Headline in that story reading as NAPU enters GIPF, Amupanda housing saga. Charmaine Gachewa reported Namibia has now begun tests to determine whether the spike in novel coronavirus cases is a result of the new variant detected in South Africa.
Charmaine Gachewa, COVID-19 correspondent. Following the confusion of whether Namibia was testing for the new variants detected in South Africa and the UK. The Health and Social Services Minister, Kalumbi Shangula, on Wednesday then said Namibia has actually started testing and samples have been sent to laboratories. So Namibia is now conducting tests, and this has been confirmed by the Minister of Health. And also the vaccines or the COVAX facility is facing a lot of contractual issues. For instance, they have a lot of delays. So this looks like Namibia might not even get the vaccine by March as expected. Like South Africa was expecting to get the vaccine by March. We also spoke to Dr. Eric Zuban from the Centers for Disease Control, the country director, who said the vaccine will come to Africa. It's going to take a little while to get here. This is still a developing story, like any other COVID-19 story stories that we've done. We will still follow up on this to see how far, to find out. I mean, Namibia has already paid 29 million to the facility to basically show our commitment to receiving this vaccine, but there are no indications when this vaccine will come.
Headline in that story reading as Namibia starts new COVID-19 variant tests. And Sake Uzikela reported on the bonuses scandal within a national broadcaster. Managers at the Namibian Broadcasting Corporation, NBC, are being accused of irregularly paying themselves more than 5.4 million Namibian dollars in performances bonuses. This is said to have been approved in secret.
The NBC issue is that towards the end of last year, NBC bosses apparently allegedly paid themselves 5.4 million in bonuses, which apparently was allegedly approved in secrecy, and the mode of calculation or determining the bonuses was not properly structured. So these are the allegations that are coming from the NBC. Some employees at the NBC are complaining why the managers are paying themselves such huge amount of money. We understand that some managers got between 100,000 to 500,000, and while the employees never got anything at all. And apparently there is currently negotiations going on at the NBC regarding initiated by the management, now trying to, in an attempt apparently to try to silence the complaints of the workers about these bonuses. So this process apparently involves the proposal to increase the salaries of the employees and pay them a back pay for performances apparently. This allegation is not new. It came from last year December. So this year we asked the NBC to properly explain what happened with the payment of those bonuses. And the response by Mr. Similo is correctly and fully reflected in that story, where he said that apparently the 5.4 million that was paid to the managers was not only focused on performances in 1 year, but it was stretched out to across a 5-year period from 2014 to 2020. So Mr. Similo said that this payment, 5.4 million, is actually part of a huge amount of 47 million that was paid to the whole of the NBC establishment, including the managers and the employees.
Headline in that story reading as NBC bosses in alleged 5.4 million Namibian dollars bonus scandal. Canadians to consult on Okavango drilling. This one reported by Lazarus Amukeshe, Canadian oil and gas company Recon Africa, the firm that was granted the license to explore for oil in the Okavango area, will engage in environmental public consultations this month. It has also notified the public to submit written comments, input and objections with regards to possible exploration before it commences with its oil search. This story reported by Lazarus Amukeshe. And Helene Mbwaya reported healthcare workers in Oshikoto region have expressed fear for their health as they are forced to attend COVID-19 patients daily without personal protective equipment. And also Sheligan Peterson and Shinovena Emmanuel reported a railway construction company co-owned by alleged fish road masterminds James Atukulipi says it's not linked to money laundering charges against its managing director David Dowie Mola. Mola is the managing director of D& M Rail Construction, a company co-owned by Hatukulipi. And Puyepewa Nakashole and Messi Karuombe reported on the ShopRite saga.
Madam First Lady, are you not married to hear our cry? We are here crying. Please support us, Madam First Lady, please.
Corona ShopRite was benefiting. They make billion, not million, but billion. What about the staff cannot benefit? Also, we want to benefit.
They are going to recruit, so we just saw new employments that are coming in. So we wasn't know that they are recruiting.
Headline in the story reading as ShopRite workers await their fate. Let's move on to sports. Chefeni Nicodemus reported on Harry Simon, who feels SWAPO owes him a gym for his unwavering loyalty and achievements. Namibia's first world boxing champion called out SWAPO for not helping him to set up shop at his native Walvis Bay, where he can nurture novice fighters. Headline in the story reading as SWAPO snubs said Simon. And that's all for this week's podcast bulletin of the Namibian newspaper. I am Enoke. Catch us again next week.